We're going to do 5 in reverse order. Your number 5 movie is The Unknown Known. Talk about that.
Oh, my goodness, it would have been so much easier if you could treat people, all of them, the same as prisoners of war. Then you wouldn't have to interrogate anybody. You could just house them someplace. Now, would that have been a responsible thing for the president to do? No.
Yeah, it is Errol Morris's documentary. He did, of course, the movie The Fog of War, where he talked to Robert McNamara about the mistakes that he'd made in the Vietnam War and his confessions of his sins and his mistakes. So he gets Donald Rumsfeld, and this one, Rumsfeld, no confessions at all in this one. It's kind of, you forget, if you haven't seen Rumsfeld for a while, his great obfuscation of language and turning it around and turning questions back at Morris. It's definitely a different kind of experience. You don't get that kind of cathartic confession that you got of The Fog of War, but it's almost a better movie because of it, because Rumsfeld is such a stubborn, difficult person to interview. It raises the ire of all that time again.
I got to say, Will, I love Errol Morris, and I saw that movie, and I missed that catharsis. I missed that moment where Errol Morris got in and finally got Rumsfeld to admit something. Instead, you feel like
that's why it's good.
You're like wrestling with a very slippery snake throughout that movie.
Exactly. It's almost more satisfying cinematically, even though it's less satisfying politically, I guess.
All right, number 4 on your list is a movie that just came out, got a huge amount of Oscar buzz. The movie is Selma, a movie I have not seen and has generated some controversy. Why don't you talk about why you liked it, and then I'll ask you the big question that's kind of looming over it in a minute.
It is unacceptable that they use their power to keep us voiceless. Those that have gone before us say no more.
Well, you know, it looks at MLK the man a little bit, but I feel like it's actually strongest when it looks at has his kind of political maneuverings. It's similar in a lot of ways to Steven Spielberg's Lincoln. At least the best parts of this are about how it's really less about like the big speeches and the big moments, though of course has those. It's more about the kind of machinations to make it happen. About how him and the SCLC, kind of how they chose their targets, why they chose Selma, why that was the place that kind of made the stand initially, and how they kind of put pressure on both Johnson and Wallace to kind of get across what they were trying to get across. So I feel like the best parts of that, the movie's not perfect, but that I really feel like it's very good at kind of the machinations and how they put all the work in and why they chose there.
A lot of LBJ allies have kind of pushed back on the movie and said that LBJ is kind of portrayed in a negative light. There are some now saying that in fact LBJ is not the hero of the movie, but is portrayed fairly. What's your view on that question?
I think he's portrayed fairly. I think that the movie gets across really well how he, first off, how he resisted a long time what King wanted him to do, and how eventually King kind of checkmated him and put him in a point where he really didn't have any choice but to do what he did. Now, we can argue whether that was cowardly or whether it was heroic, but the fact is it got done. Johnson got that in his legacy, and King kind of pushed that to happen. The idea that, and also the idea that after years and years and years of white filmmakers venerating Johnson, the idea that, oh no, Johnson doesn't come across as this total hero when finally we have a great black filmmaker making a film about King, I feel like is maybe kind of small beans.
All right, we got 2 minutes for the last 3 movies, Will, so let's do these next 2 sort of quickly so we can save time for number 1. American Sniper, Bradley Cooper's new movie, Clint Eastwood. Talk about that.
Yeah, I wrote about that for us at Bloomberg Politics, generally about the idea this is kind of Eastwood's red meat for red states movie. It's really less about the war itself and kind of the warrior mentality of the military. I think it's the type of movie that military members and their families will really, really kind of really connect with.
Okay, and your number 2 movie is A Most Wanted Man, probably the one that fewer people have seen than some of these others.
Tell me I've broken every rule in the book, that I've trampled on the essence of the Constitution. You want to spout that crap?
Philip Seymour Hoffman's last movie. Talk about that one a little bit. Yeah, he plays a German secret agent leader who basically he's trying to figure out a terror plot in the months after 9/11. Basically, the movie's about how even when you have a guy and even when you make the connections, there's so many different countries and so many kind of cooks in the kitchen that it kind of speaks to the bureaucracy and kind of the difficulty of really why some of the mistakes were made after 9/11. And it's a wonderful performance by Hoffman, like deeply sad, particularly that was his last one.
Yeah, I saw that movie just the other night on TV. I got to say, it's a Jean Le Carré novel that it's adapted from. Philip Seymour Hoffman, incredibly wonderful in it. I urge everyone to see it. Will, your number 1 is not a movie that most people would consider political, but you do. A movie I love desperately. The movie is Boyhood.
Yeah, I love the movie desperately too. Of course, it's it looks at the last 12 years of it looks at one kid's life, but the greatness of the movie, there's many reasons the movie's great, but one of the great things about the movie is it allows you to kind of get a sense of the time and place without kind of hitting you over the head with it. It's this kind of incredible chronicle of the last 12 years that's kind of happening in the background while we're getting the story in the foreground. There's this very, very funny scene where we see people we see a woman who's putting up an Obama sign in like 2007, and she's so over the moon about Obama, which of course has its own kind of fun moments now. But of course, you realize that was actually filmed in 2007.
Are you doing this through your school?
Our dad's a big supporter.
Oh, that is great. I mean, we've just got to pull together to get this win, right?
Yeah.
I just love him so much. I mean, I have these dreams where I'm just kissing him because I just love him so much. So cute, isn't he?
I feel like the movie is this wonderful little time capsule document. In addition to this great story about a boy and his family, this time capsule document of really what the last kind of 12, 13 years were like to actually live them in real time.